Welcome to NHA Today, the podcast of the National Health Association, one of the oldest and most respected health science organizations in the world. I'm your host, Dr. Stephan Esser, physician, lifestyle medicine advocate, and a fourth-generation plant-based eater with the NHA quite literally in my blood. Each week, we bring you real science, honest conversations, and practical tools to help you become the CEO of your own health. Let's get into it. Hi, it's Dr. Stephan Esser, and today I'm excited to introduce to you Mr. Jason DeSalvo. Jason and his wife, Deborah, run a 43-acre regenerative certified organic farm in western New Jersey. In 2020, they started their farm, and in 2022, transformed their own health with a Whole Foods SOS program. So you can actually learn more about their amazing farm and what they do at www.coldbrookfarmnj.com. But we're going to jump right in today. Thanks for joining today, Jason. I'm going to ask you some fun getting to know you questions. We're going to start with, what's your favorite vegetable growing on the farm right now?
God, asparagus. It's high asparagus season here in New Jersey, and we've got a couple of beautiful beds that we planted 5 years ago, and they are in full form. So we're eating pounds of them every day.
I was going to say, my experience with fresh asparagus is when you get them out of the farm, out of the garden right there, they're nothing like what's in the store.
Nothing at all. And we've got two varieties. One is purple, and these are they just grow really big and thick, and they are so sweet. When people eat, we serve them raw. And when people eat them, they can't believe they're asparagus. They're delicious.
I mean, it's such a huge difference, right? They're kind of like, they have this nice crunch to them, and then they're juicy and sweet versus these stringy, rough, nothing. Ooh, right? You have to overcook them just to even, tolerate them.
Just to make them even palatable.
That's amazing. So. All right. And then another question about the farm. What is your least favorite responsibility on the farm?
I was just doing it, actually. I was just doing it right before we got on. I've been doing it since 7 this morning. We unfortunately are in a heat wave right now in the Northeast, completely abnormal heat wave. It's going to be 94 today and 96 tomorrow. And we, in the last 2 years, have planted several hundred, maybe probably 400 or 500 total trees, shrubs, all native. And they need water, right? Their root systems are not adapted enough yet to really tolerate this kind of heat this early in the season. They've just leafed out. So I go around on our little electric buggy with a 50-gallon water tank on the back and water. And that's, even though it's life-giving to them, it's something that I just wish I didn't have to do. If we had a normal climate, there'd be plenty of rain in April and May, and these things would be fine.
Right. No, that sounds like a lot of time as well, just kind of out there going from point to point. Your favorite time of day on the farm is when and why?
Morning, right as the farm's waking up. I'm an early riser, as I guess most people on farms are. I was up today at 3:30. When the sun starts to come up, and especially at this time of year with the spring migrant birds, there's the dawn chorus. The air is sweet. It's still cool. I'll go outside. I'll have my, bowl of berries, my muesli on the porch. We have a beautiful screened-in porch, and you just hear bird song and smell the fresh air. I haven't really started the workday yet. I'm thinking about what we're going to do for the day to be productive, but it's a really kind of zen time where it's just me time. Deb's a later riser. She usually gets up an hour or two after me. So it's a really nice contemplative time where it's just me, nature, and usually a cat or two, because we have 3 ragdoll cats that like to come join. So
that sounds nice, absolutely pastoral, absolutely beautiful. I can just visualize. You gave some great kind of words, and there's some descriptors. So I think I'm going to be thinking of you now when I get up and like visualizing you out there looking out, watching things. So, there's a lot of buzz about regenerative farming. In a nutshell, can you tell our listeners, what does that really mean? What is a regenerative farm?
Well, like any hot buzzword, it risks being overused and abused. And I think it is being abused by certain sectors of the corporate, big corporations are grabbing onto this because they realize they can charge a premium. But in its simplest terms, if you're doing it really, what it means is you are working to regenerate the soil and the ecosystem where you are. Simply put, it's farming in a way that's leaving the land in better condition each year as opposed to when you started working it. By way of example, when we first started working here, when we bought our farm, it had been farmed this is the last time I'll use the word conventionally, because to me, it is not at all conventional to douse your land with chemicals, but it was chemical agriculture. It was GMO corn and soy and very extractive. There was less than 1% organic material in the soil. The soil was hard as a rock. If I tried to dig into it with my hands, you'd break your fingers. There was no worms, no mycorrhizae, fungi in there. It was really just dead. We're now 6 years into managing it. We started managing it in 2020. And last year we had 11% organic material in our soil.
Nice.
It's loaded with worms. And the whole ecosystem has changed. We see pollinators, we see tons of insects, we see bird life, and each year it's gotten better. And we do that not only on our grain field, but we also do it inside. So we're on 43 acres, and the way the 43 acres shakes out is there is a 13-acre field in which we have a 2-acre homestead. And in that homestead, we have house, barn, and then everything else. Actually, it's 2.5-acre homestead. So that the buildings take up roughly half an acre. Then there's 2 acres of permaculture where we grow 70 different fruit, vegetables, berries, nuts, things like that. And then outside, we have a 10-acre grain field. And the difference with regenerative agriculture is our first job is to take care of the ecosystem. And if we are doing that, in theory, we should be growing great food. In reality, we are growing great food. Even in our second year of farming our grain, Dan Barber, who wrote the book, The Third Plate, which is a great read about kind of the importance of connecting the commercial kitchen to the farm and how that connection's been broken in many ways, and how putting that together makes us a better society, makes for healthier food. Dan and his team started buying our grain back in our second harvest. Our wonderful wholesaler, River Valley Community Grains, they connected us with Blue Hill at Stone Barns.
Nice.
And they buy food based on how it tastes. And you've got to be regenerative, you got to be organic. But if you check those 2 boxes, then they'll bring your product in and they taste it. And then it's got to taste great. And I think healthy regenerative food grown in regenerative soil tastes great because there's so many micronutrients in it, because that
Right.
soil is got so much life there that the plants are not starving. They're able to have a lot of nutrient uptake. And that's why a fresh asparagus coming off a farm that's well farmed tastes completely different.
Right. Now, you weren't always in farming. What kind of attracted you to this area of,
Deb and I, it's a little bit of mission creep. So Deb and I spent most of my life in healthcare. Not as a physician like you, but my dad was a physician, and he actually was credited with starting the outpatient diagnostic imaging industry back in 1977.
Nice.
He got the idea to that's right when computed tomography, back then it was called computerized axial tomography, and so when CT scanning started, these scanners were hugely expensive, and the reimbursement law at that time was punitive to a hospital that would put one in. So he said, why don't we do them as outpatients? And he did that in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And then he got into MRI. I ended up working for his company while I was in business school during the summers. And then down the road after that, I joined that company. I stayed on actually after he left it, but I was in healthcare management, managing positron emission tomography centers. So
Cool.
I was
And then, but
really
what happened,
interesting
right?
stuff.
You suddenly decided you wanted to become a farmer? I mean,
what happened was I still have some great people that run that company, but I was like, should I retire or should I not retire? My team didn't want me to retire because they like working with me. And so I said, I really want to do something different. We positioned the company so that they could make the money that I was making, and I could spend some more time with Deb. I still work for the company, but not in the kind of full-time entrepreneur, 60-hour a week capacity. Deb and I decided we wanted to get someplace a little quieter. We lived in Montclair, New Jersey for almost 30 years. And Montclair was kind of sleepy when we moved there. And now we jokingly refer to it as the really, really west side of Manhattan, because it's got a very New York sensibility, which is great if that's what you're in the mood for. But Deb and I are both naturalists. We like open spaces. We like quiet. So we wanted to move, and we said we want to grow some of our own food. We were not whole food plant-based yet at all. We always had a garden. So we were looking for 3 to 5 acres and a place to grow a small vegetable garden with some good southern exposure so that we could have solar panels. Somehow that morphed into a completely self-sustainable household that is completely powered by solar power and managing not only the 43-acre farm that we manage, but our neighbors behind us loved what we were doing so much, they asked us to convert 90 acres of their farm to regenerative agriculture. Then a second neighbor asked us to convert 8 acres there, and another neighbor behind us, 8 acres there. So all of a sudden, we went from knowing nothing about farming 7 years ago to being responsible for almost 120 acres of grain growing for human consumption.
So you quit a 60-hour job to take a 110-hour per week job is what I'm hearing.
It was a fail of biblical proportions when it comes to working less.
Right.
On the other side of the coin, like healthcare, where you're helping people, it's got that same thing, right?
Wow,
and
it's
so
such a
it gives you that, gives you
Yeah.
that energy.
Now, some of your produce, I heard, was kind of featured in some 5-star Michelin restaurants. And when you think about quality produce, I want to ask you some questions here because we want our viewers to leave having some tips, some tricks, some good things they can, kind of apply to their own personal lives. So give me 5 things to think about when they're selecting some produce at the store. What are some things that you would say you've got to look at this? Because not everybody has access to a gorgeous, farm and ranch like you have there. So let's say they're going to their local supermarket. What are some of your tips for them real quick on selecting the best produce they can?
Okay. I'm going to give one caveat and then I'm going to jump to the specific question that you asked. The first thing I would do is to not necessarily assume that you can't find locally sourced organic vegetables. So the first thing I would do is literally with this great tool that we have now, Google organic regenerative produce near me, right? And see if anything comes up. We've had friends that found farms by doing that were within a 20-minute drive of them that they didn't even know existed, right?
Nice.
Because we're so busy working on our farms. I don't have a great marketing program.
Right.
So part of the problem is that small farms don't always get heard about. So, but let's assume that you really are in a food desert and you don't have access to good regeneratively grown small farm produce. The first thing to do is go to all your grocery stores, and really produce when it's great tends to look good. When lettuce is wilted and kind of tired looking, that means it's been on a truck way too long. Your produce should look vibrant. It should look fresh. I would ask to talk to the grocery department manager or the produce department manager. Very often they will be enthusiastic to speak to you. Ask them what's come in that's fresh recently. They'll know what they're having trouble sourcing. They'll know what's just come in. Look at the aisles. If you're in a store where stuff is merchandised beautifully and it looks fresh, that's a place you want to start, right? So first thing is check in multiple locations and find the store near you that it looks like cares about their produce the most. We try to eat 100% organic. That's not always possible. We could do a whole show on that and why it's so important. But the more organic that you can get in a grocery store, the better. You're generally going to get healthier produce that way.
Right.
When choosing between different kinds of produce, obviously with our diet, we always want a lot of greens, right? So the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking for my kale. I'm looking for my collards. I'm looking for my broccoli. I'm looking, for things that are going to be healthy. Don't assume that the first thing you pick up is the one you should buy. Very often in grocery stores, when they merchandise them, they will take out the older stuff and put the fresh stuff at the back and then put the older stuff back in front. So make sure you look through the shelf when you're picking your produce and pick the freshest looking stuff. Pick the stuff that doesn't look wilted. I personally like to buy food with a lot of color. If I'm looking, let's say I'm buying chard. If there's a package of chard that looks really vibrant and it's got great intense red color versus one that is kind of a little wilty and the color is a little more washed out, I'm going to go for that one that looks healthier. Is this something that's scientific? No. Do I know that this is making better produce? No. But I know that it generally tastes better and makes me feel good.
Yeah, well, we
Um,
wanted your take, and what I'm hearing from you is kind of local, organic, of the regenerative out there if we can get it,
yep.
discuss with the manager of the produce section, look for that fresh, colorful stuff that looks the way it should, not like it's all, like you said, beat up, wilted, or artificially preserved. Now you guys made a pretty big transition in 2022 or 2020.
Yes.
No, 2022.
22.
Yeah,
2022.
to kind of, so tell us kind of what were the top 3 reasons why you decided to transition to a whole food plant-based program?
It was initially entirely health-based. My cholesterol, I've been a competitive athlete for over 30 years. And I was a cyclist. I'm a marathon runner. And no matter what I did, I ate the Mediterranean diet and I was the healthiest eater that I knew. My friends made fun of me. Okay. I was the guy that we'd go out for pizza. I pull the cheese off the pizza. If I ate red meat, it was maybe once a month, maybe a 3-ounce portion. I ate all the healthy stuff. I ate plenty of salmon. I ate my vegetables. I ate legumes. What I did do was eat a tremendous amount of olive oil, right? My family's Italian, and olive oil, like I'd wake up in the morning and my idea of a healthy breakfast was, a nice couple of pieces of whole grain toast doused with olive oil and honey.
Right.
And that was
Right.
like, that's healthy, right? So my cholesterol kept going up. And so my cholesterol was it was either 255 or 265. I can't remember. And that was not good. It wasn't that high for long. I had my physical and it was kind of shocking to me. Usually it always was between 180 and 205.
Right.
And all of a sudden I was like, wow. And so my primary care physician said, well, we're going to have to put you on a statin. And I said, I really don't want to go on a statin. I want to try to do something with lifestyle. And she laughed at me and she goes, you're already the healthiest patient from an eating standpoint I know,
Right.
because most primary care docs
That's
say
right.
the Mediterranean diet is the gold standard. I decided that I wanted to read about it. I knew that Dr. Ron Weiss, I knew he was up the road from us, and that was fortuitous. It was just dumb luck that his farm is about 10 miles the way the crow flies from our farm. And he's a lifestyle medicine doctor that also happens to be plant-based. The way I knew this is we shopped at his farm for vegetables that we didn't grow. And the people that were there were mostly whole food plant-based. And they would have these conversations that just sounded weird to me and Deb. Like, what are you cooking tonight? Well, make sure you don't use oil. And I'm just scratching my head. Like, what is this? So long story short, I started purely for health. And I started with Dr. Weiss. And within a month, my cholesterol plummeted. I think 3 months out, it was down to 150. All of my blood markers started looking better.
Nice.
So it was health.
Right.
But then I started feeling, and we did it cold turkey. I went from being a Mediterranean diet guy to whole food, plant-based, SOS-free in the strictest sense in 1 week. It was just like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it.
Right.
Deb woke up one morning and all of the garbage was out of the pantry. And she's like, what did you do? I said, I got rid of the stuff that we're not supposed to eat. And she's like, I'm not fully committed to this yet. What am I going to eat? I'm like, sorry. Luckily she's really cool and she jumped on board with me. So that was the primary reason. That said, I had never really felt comfortable eating animals. Honestly, I was vegetarian for a couple of years in college. It always seemed wrong to me that I needed to kill something else in order to eat when I had options. But as an athlete, I had been programmed by all my coaches that you need your protein. You need your protein. So, I was on the bandwagon of, the perfect pre-race meal is sushi, right? Lots of protein, lots of carbohydrates. It's great. Anyway. So very rapidly, as I started eating this way, not hurting other creatures became very important to me, but it wasn't initially.
Yeah.
And then I learned through the NHA, through presentations there, through presentations up at Ethos, Farm, Dr. Weiss's place, I learned just how abominable animal agriculture is for the environment. Here I am building a house that's completely self-contained environmentally from the standpoint of solar power. We have our own well, we drive electric cars, and I find out that all of that is dwarfed by just changing the way we ate in terms of our impact on the planet, right?
Powerful. So
So
I mean, it
those are
sounds, yeah, you hit all three of them, right? I
those are the
mean,
big three.
right.
That's why.
That's
Yep.
beautiful. Very personally kind of experienced by you in those, in the last couple of years. So very cool. When you think about, that transition for you, what was the hardest part? Or was there a
Oh my
hardest part?
God.
Was it more just a
No, there
rational,
was
like, yeah, tell
the
us.
the part that many people seem to have problems with for whatever reason we didn't. I really liked the food. My palate changed very quickly. I stopped drinking coffee, stopped drinking wine, which were two other things I liked because those just tasted so strong after my palate got used to a plant-based diet with no oil, salt, and sugar, that those were like, they were almost like, Um, we had a 6,500 bottle wine cellar that I had to figure out what to do with it when I stopped drinking. So, um, the hardest part by far was social because we were serious foodies. We would travel to Piedmont, Italy during truffle season to go and eat fresh truffles. We would go to farm country, went like New Jersey. We'd be down in South Jersey when the asparagus first bloomed to eat fresh asparagus, right? Food really mattered to us, but the food we were eating that we thought was really good, and it was really good from a gourmet standpoint,
Right.
was not healthy. And we
Yeah.
didn't know that. So our circle of friends were all like that. And when we first told them that we had changed the way we ate, and especially that, because a lot of them were friends through wine. So now we're not drinking wine. We're not going to gourmet restaurants. And when we do go out to eat with them, we're those people that are like, could we get this without that? And this, it was hard. We lost some friends through that. And that was a very difficult transition, even for our family initially.
Do you feel like over time you've developed a new circle of friends, a new network of people that share your belief systems?
100%. Two things happened. The people that were truly closest to us, they got used to it. Like our kids, our family, they're totally good with it now. Like we just had Mother's Day and they found a great vegan restaurant in New York City to take my wife to with me and, ask them to adjust the menu a bit so that, all right, maybe it's a little bit of a cheat for us, but we can enjoy the thing together. Um, and then we found a whole bunch of new friends. The NHA, right? The National Health. One of the first things that Dr. Weiss told us to do was join NHA when we first became his patient. And we did it right away. And then Ethos, which is Dr. Weiss's practice, they have an amazing community too of a couple of hundred people that are his patients. So between those two, we made a lot of new friends. And then with a couple of exceptions, most of our old friends kind of came back to us when they realized this wasn't a fad. We hadn't joined a cult. We're doing it for good reasons. And they became respectful of it. They don't love eating with us anymore. They don't want to go out to a restaurant with us as much, but they'll come over to the farm and they'll hang out. And I think we're kind of more authentically engaging because we're engaging about life. We're talking about things that matter. We're not just going to a restaurant and deciding
Right.
what we're going to eat.
Well, I
Um,
love what you said, a couple things there. One is you expanded your network by using resources that are at your fingertips. And that's one of the great things about the NHA and certainly
yep.
the annual conference coming up in June, which,
Yes.
meeting people from around the country who have similar belief systems and passions for health. And I mean, I think it's hard for many people making that social transition. But the reality is, as people begin to respect and recognize, what you stand for and why, I think some of those, like you said, I mean, how can you not respect the fact the three major things you just said there? You care about your health, you care about planetary health, and you recognize there's, why kill an animal if you don't have to, right? I mean, so I mean,
Right.
those are some just straightforward, rational, compassionate,
Yep.
things. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
hello.
And it's
So
kind of, to a certain extent, people that can't respect those three things, right? If people say, I want you to be unhealthy so you can eat with me, or, I don't want you to care about the environment and the planet, or, it's okay to kill something that doesn't need to die. I kind of have a lot of trouble now being around that, which has changed, for
Yeah,
me.
somewhat of a
So,
transition for sure for you as well. A
yeah,
lot of people have negative perspectives on grains, and especially in our contemporary culture. Although, as we both know, the science doesn't necessarily support that. When you think about the grains that you grow, tell us why you feel like, and tell us what type of grains you grow, and why you feel
sure.
like those grains are, different than what somebody might get
Well,
off the shelf.
one cool thing is Deb and I, the title of Deb and my talk at the upcoming conference is Whole Grains, Myth versus Reality. So we're going to do a whole hour deep dive on this for the folks coming or watching the conference. And our grains, first of all, remember, it starts with healthy soil, right? So if you're growing grain in healthy soil, you're pumping more nutrient into that grain plant. We grow older varieties. Right now on my field, right outside my window, we've got something called Rouge de Bordeaux, which is it's an heirloom variety from France from the 1800s, before big agriculture started trying to boost yields and make the outside shell of the grain, if you will, the bran part, so hard that it wouldn't be damaged with mechanical harvesting, that it also creates indigestion in some people. So modern wheats very often are difficult for modern humans to digest. Whereas the older wheats, we've grown einkorn before, which is the oldest wheat, cultivated by man. We can't really grow kamut here, which is corazan, but that's a great, great ancient grain. These ancient grains are a lot easier, but our specific on our stomachs, our specific grains right now this year, we're growing 3 different kinds of heirloom wheats. We're not growing an ancient wheat this year. We will grow one next year. Next year, we'll grow einkorn again. We're growing rye and we're growing oats. And one of the big things that's important about oats to get across to your listeners or our listeners, oats come in 2 forms. The ancient varieties are hull-less oats, and hull-less oats don't require dehulling. Dehulling requires either a steaming or a boiling process to get that hard outer shell off. So when you buy oats in the store, universally, unless you're getting them from a small farm or an organic farm, you're getting hulled oats that have been dehulled because they yield much higher and they're much easier to grow commercially. The problem with them is by the time you get them, whether you get them as groats, whether you get them as rolled, or whether you get them as steel cut, they've been processed already, right? And we're not supposed to eat processed food. So we grow hull-less oats. This year we're growing a variety called streaker oats. We've also grown a variety called Gale oats. A lot of NHA members buy our oats and they are blown away by the taste difference. They
Neat.
taste nothing like what you get in the store. They are
Right.
so much more earthy and vibrant, creamy. I know people that used to use plant-based milks to make their oatmeal because they wanted their oatmeal creamy. I'd said, just buy fresh rolled or, groats, either way, that are well grown, and you'll have the creamiest bowl of oatmeal you've ever had.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Growing plants is such a delight, right? To kind of see that little tiny seedling come up. I feel like
Yep,
there's such a kind of analogy to our own growth and development. You know what I mean? We see the
it is.
seasons and the growth.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of people, I want you to give a couple tips. I want you to give like 3 or 4 tips, if you would,
sure.
to, let's say, somebody who, let's make it really hard. They live in an apartment. All they have is like
Okay.
a little deck. I'm going to make it really hard on you. But they want to grow something. What would you encourage them to do?
All right. What climate are they in? Give me one more.
One
Are
more.
they,
Okay. They're Midwest.
all right,
How's that?
Midwest. So they've got a seasonal climate, which really means the first thing you're going to do is you're going to grow sprouts, right? Because sprouts you can do indoors. From the time you plant them, you do them in jars. You can buy sprout kits all over the internet. Super, super healthy. And it's like you said, it is so fun when you plant these things and like several days later, you see the little green sprouts coming up. And then, 3 days after that, you're eating them. It's
Yes.
awesome. And you can grow enough sprouts that you can eat a lot of sprouts, and sprouts are super healthy. So there's no excuse not to grow sprouts. It's the easiest thing to do. So they should be growing sprouts. And they can grow all different kinds, and you can have 3 or 4 different kinds going, and that's cool. Then on your balcony, when it gets warmer, you can do things like some tomatoes. You can do a small lettuce bed if you want, depending on how big your balcony is. things that are super easy to grow. You can grow basil. You know what? If let's say you're pressed and you have a killer job and you don't have a lot of time, do sprouts inside and grow 3 or 4 fresh herbs on your outdoor balcony, or even near a windowsill where you get enough sunlight. Maybe grow a little basil, grow some oregano, grow some thyme. They're all really hardy. And then you can be adding flavor to your food with that, since we don't eat salt, oil, or sugar. And the cool thing is they're easy to grow, and you'll get hooked on growing your own food. And then you'll start thinking about, all right, maybe next year I'll do a tomato trellis outside, or maybe I'll grow cucumbers outside. So start easy, start with herbs and sprouts, and dip your toe in the water. Don't make it too hard. And if you kill them, try again. Have fun with it, and then go from there. That's what I would do.
I think those are great advice to the people out there, right? So everybody on this podcast, next time we see you or chat with you, we are expected to see some of those sprouts, right? You can drop some of your pictures below of the beautiful sprouts you've grown. Jason, I really enjoyed spending time with you today. Everybody listening, make sure you're signing up for either in-person or virtual for our conference coming up in June this year. You're going to hear Jason and his wife, Deborah, kind of talking about this whole myth versus the reality of grains for our health. Jason, anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I would say grains have gotten the whole protein insanity that we've gone through in the last couple of decades, starting with things like the Atkins diet, whatever. It's given grains a bad rap. They get grouped into carbs are bad, okay? Yes, carbs that are simple sugars that have been processed to heck, they are bad. But complex carbohydrates coming from regeneratively organic growing grain are some of the healthiest things you can eat. They've got so many of the amino acids that you need. They've got protein, they've got fiber. Our grain is between 13 and 14% protein. So when people are complaining about not getting protein, you can eat grains that have 13 to 14% protein in them. Don't shy away from learning about grains. Don't fall into that trap. It's exactly the same trap as where do you get your protein? They're one and the same. We'll teach more about it at the conference, and I can't wait to hear you speak. There's going to be a lot of good stuff to learn there. So thank you. I
always love getting there. Of course.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks everybody for joining in today. We look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.
Thanks, Dr. Esser.
Thanks for joining me on NHA Today. If today's conversation inspired you, I want to personally invite you to join us at the NHA Annual Conference, where you'll hear from incredible speakers, including many of the guests you've been meeting right here on this podcast. It's one of the most meaningful weekends of the year for anyone serious about their health. Get all the details and register at healthscience.org. You can also follow me on social media at Esser Health and find NHA Today on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep moving forward your most vital health.